Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here and for your service to our nation. I just want to ask one question for the panel. It's my personal belief that the biggest challenge facing the intelligence community, and therefore the biggest potential threat facing our nation, is when, unlike 9/11, where we had universal 100% support, we had incredible bipartisanship here in Congress, incredible universal support for the intelligence agencies. When things happen, and by the way, in the case of Director Haynes, Director Burns, Director Wray, due to the actions of your predecessors, not yourselves, you've been forced to deal with their actions. When there's a chipping away of that trust, when we're impaneling juries and conducting jury questioning, there's a way to remove jurors for bias, amongst other things. The background check system, the polygraphs can screen for drug use, foreign contacts and the like, but there's really no way that I'm aware of, and I don't know if there's a policy solution that we can check for bias, because I think the biggest threat to these agencies is when there's a public perception that there's a political bias on the left or the right. It could be both. It used to be easy to do that when we lived in different times, but our country is very, hyperpartisanship is at a spike right now, and that invariably bleeds into the hiring process and makes it tough for the agencies to screen for that. So how do you deal with that, right? I mean, when I was in the Bureau, we rarely, if ever, heard any talk about politics. We really didn't, and I took that as a source of pride for the Bureau. But this was before we've seen the spike in hyperpartisanship. How do your agencies combat that? Because it really is a risk, because it bleeds into the public not having faith, in some cases justified, in some cases not, of the actions of the various agencies.
Well, obviously it's a complicated topic. One thing I will point to that we've done, because I think you're right to focus not just on actual problems, which have occurred, but appearances, issues, perceptions, those things matter. And so one of the things that we did is I ordered a stand down to focus on not just objectivity, but making sure that we avoided even the appearance of bias. And so I started in a way that you will, from your past experience, recognize is very unusual at the FBI. Instead of saddling the front lines with some new training requirement because of something somebody else somewhere did, I started at the top. So I took all 250 or whatever it is of the SESers, all the way from Legat in Australia, all the way to California, and made them all come to Quantico for a single day, where the overwhelming message was back to fundamentals, the right thing in the right way. What they heard from judges, because a lot of what you're describing about is sort of trying to adopt more of the kind of mindset that judges have. They may have political backgrounds, but they put those to the side. They check them at the door when they take on the robe. We need to have that same kind of mentality. So the point was to start at the top, with everybody at the top of the organization, make them take the medicine first, and then push it out to the workforce, and we did it for the entire workforce.
Can I just add to that? If you want to, just to say that I think this is a critical issue, and I think, Congressman, as you think about this, if you have ideas for us, please let us know. I see this as, first of all, from a leadership perspective, setting the tone for a culture that makes clear that, just as you described your prior experience in government, that politics have no place in the workspace and in national security, that this is something that, I also grew up as a civil servant in the government, and nobody asked me what party I belonged to. That was never an issue, and that's something that just has no place in our work. And I think we are looking, as Director Wray's comments make clear, like across the intelligence community, all of us, I think, feel very strongly about setting that tone for culture and making sure that that's not an issue. I think the second piece for the IC more generally is, in fact, engaging in greater transparency where we can. And I think exposing our assessments, doing an annual threat assessment world hearing in an open forum, as you've asked us to come back and do, trying to put out more of our products, trying to give an opportunity for the American people to see the work that we do, sort of, to give a little bit more insight into how it is that we do things can help. And then finally, in the context of transparency, giving more of a sense of the rules within which we operate and do not. And that's something that we're continuing to try to push out, frameworks and ways of working and compliance things to expose when we make mistakes and when we don't, and why it is that what we're doing about it.
Director, we're going to have to move on if you don't mind holding your comments. Great. Mr. Crenshaw?